never planned on attending my son's second wedding. Not because I wasn't invited, though technically I wasn't. There was no card, no phone call, not even a lazy text, just a photo posted to Facebook 3 days before the ceremony. Evan in a beige linen suit, standing next to her, the woman he swore he wasn't seeing while he was still married to Monica. The caption read, "Next chapter loading. Can't wait to marry my best friend." That post got over 200 likes. Mine got 3, and one of them was from my dentist. So no, I wasn't planning on attending. But then, the day before the wedding, I got a call from someone who did still think I mattered. "Grandma? Liam baby? Shouldn't you be getting ready for the big day?" He hesitated. "Dad says you're not coming." "Well, I wasn't invited, sweetheart. He told everyone you were too sick to fly. He said you forget things now." I froze. "I don't forget you," I said. "I know," he whispered. "Can you still come, please? That boy has my heart. Has since the day Monica handed him to me, wrapped in that striped blue hospital blanket, and said, 'Meet your biggest fan.' Liam will be 10 this November. He still hugs with both arms, tight and trusting. The kind of hug you miss long before it's even gone. So I booked a red-eye that night, $437.60 round trip out of my savings. My arthritis hated me for it, and so did my back, but I made it. I didn't tell anyone, except Liam. He met me outside the venue at 9:43 a.m., just like we planned. A little tuxedo, hair too neatly combed, a chocolate stain already forming near his collar. His face lit up like someone handed him the sun. "You made it!" "Course I did," I said. "You think I'd miss this circus?" The ceremony was being held at a vineyard about 30 minutes outside Santa Rosa. I'd been there once, years ago, for a wine tasting Evan gave me for Mother's Day, back when Monica still chose the gifts. Now they'd transformed it with gold-draped chairs, 2 rented peacocks, yes, actual peacocks, pacing near the arbor, and enough eucalyptus garlands to make a koala weep. There was no seat reserved for me, of course, but I didn't need one. I stood near the back, half shaded by an olive tree, hands folded over my purse. No one noticed me. No one except her, Sabrina. The woman Evan left his marriage for. Bleached hair in that polished, shellacked way young women think is timeless. A tight ivory dress that looked like it cost at least $3,000, maybe more. I watched her glide up the aisle like a swan on a stolen lake. My son didn't look nervous. He looked rehearsed, like he'd run this scene in his head 1,000 times and never once pictured me in the audience. And then, just as the officiant began speaking, Liam, sitting in the second row, turned around in his chair and caught my eye. He smiled, a shy, almost guilty smile. Then he leaned sideways and whispered something to the girl next to him. She frowned. He shook his head, then got up and came to me, still clutching a half-eaten mini cupcake. "Grandma?" "Yes, baby?" He pointed subtly to the table just to the left of the altar. It held candles, guest books, and a velvet-covered box with gold ribbon. "Look under that table," he said. "Why?" "Because Dad hid something there. He told me not to touch it. He said it wasn't for today." "What is it?" "I don't know, but I think it's for you." I don't know why I listened. Maybe because Liam's voice trembled just a little, or maybe because my voice had been silenced for too long. I waited until the crowd's eyes were all turned forward. The officiant was saying something about joined as one in eternal harmony. The photographer was snapping like a man possessed. I walked up the side path, slowly, pretending to be a curious guet, even though no one knew I was there, and came around the far side of the arbor. My hands trembled as I knelt, knees protesting the bend. I reached under the table, and I felt it. A stack of manila folders wrapped in a rubber band. I pulled them out. The first page had my name on it. Helen Marie Fletcher, D.O.B., 11/08/1956. Petition for power of attorney. Filed, signed, notarized, dated 3 days ago. The next pages? Bank statements, asset lists, property valuations, legal affidavits claiming I was no longer of sound mind, that I had been exhibiting early signs of cognitive decline and posing a risk to her own financial welfare. My son was going to declare me legally incompetent. At his wedding, while he smiled into a camera, holding hands with his new wife, he had a plan in place to take everything I owned. I don't remember standing up. I just remember the wind shifting, the smell of wine in the air, a mother's rage blooming in my chest like an old engine catching fire. I walked out from behind the arbor, the papers still in my hands. Liam saw me first. His eyes widened, then Sabrina, then Evan. And just as the officiant said, "If anyone has reason why these two should not be joined in marriage," I raised my voice and said, "I do." You could hear the eucalyptus leaves rustling before anyone spoke. No gasps, no dramatic wails, not yet. Just that eerie kind of silence that stretches and tightens like a balloon right before it pops. All eyes were on me. I held the stack of manila folders against my chest like a shield, my fingers still shaking. My left thumb was smudged with ink from the petition. A bit of Liam's cupcake frosting stained the corner of one page. It made the whole thing feel even more absurd. Evan's smile faltered first. Then his face changed. Not to shock, not to guilt, but to something colder, calculation. Like a man flipping through scenarios in his mind, trying to figure out how to spin the room back in his favor. "Mom," he said slowly, with that condescending tone he used to use when I forgot my keys. "You shouldn't be here." I stepped forward. "Clearly." A murmur swept through the guests. Sabrina grabbed Evan's wrist, not delicately, but with a grip that meant, "You said she wasn't coming." Her eyes darted between me and the table, probably wondering if I'd pulled out something more dangerous than legal documents. "I'd like to say a few words," I said, raising the papers in the air. "Since apparently I'm mentally unfit to do much else." No one moved to stop me. Not the officiant, a young woman with a clipboard and a panicked expression. Not the wedding planner, frozen near the champagne station, and certainly not Evan. His jaw tightened, but his feet stayed planted. Maybe he still thought I'd embarrass myself, or maybe he hoped I'd prove his case right there in front of everyone. Let me tell you something. I've lived 68 years on this earth. I raised 2 boys without a husband, worked 3 jobs at once, and never once asked Evan for a damn dime. And now, after all of it, I find out he was filing for power of attorney behind my back, trying to seize control of my checking account, my pension, my house, the one I paid off in 1997, brick by brick, month by month. Well, there are times when silence is dignity, and times when silence is surrender. So I spoke. "I wasn't invited to this wedding," I began, voice steady, "but my grandson asked me to come. He said there was something I needed to see." Evan took one step toward me. "Mom, please," I held up a hand. I thought maybe it would be a photo or a gift. Instead, I found these. I waved the paper slightly. A signed petition to declare me legally incompetent, statements from my doctor, who I haven't seen in 2 years, and a notarized signature I don't remember giving. A woman near the front, Monica's sister, I think, audibly gasped. Sabrina stepped away from Eva, and her fingers still clenched. I turned to the crowd. "Most of you don't know me. I'm Evan's mother. I worked as a home nurse for 27 years. I'm not wealthy, but I've managed to save a little. Enough to cover my rent, buy my medications, and, until recently, send Liam a birthday check every year. This year, Evan intercepted it, said Liam lost it. I believed him. The truth was, I knew something had been off for a while. Evan had started asking strange questions about my will, my passwords, even my prescriptions. He'd asked to help me organize my files, and 2 months ago, when I said I didn't want to sign a blank paper he gave me, he pouted, said I didn't trust him. Turns out, I was right not to. I locked eyes with Sabrina. "Did you know?" I asked. She didn't answer, but her silence said enough. Her lips parted slightly, as if she wanted to lie, but couldn't find one fast enough. "Did you plan this together?" I asked again. "Was the honeymoon paid for with my money?" Still no answer. "Let me tell you all what this man, my son, planned to do," I said. Once the petition was approved, he would take over all my accounts. He would move me into an assisted living facility. And yes, I found the brochure in the folder. A place in Nevada. $3,600 a month, shared room. He'd sell my house, my furniture, my jewelry, even my wedding ring. Yes, your father's ring, Evan. He clenched his jaw, but now it was rage, not shame. "Mom, stop this," he hissed. "You don't know what you're saying." I turned to him. "Oh, I do. I know exactly what I'm saying. For once, you don't control the story." It wasn't until I walked over to the guestbook table that people started moving. One woman stood. 2 more followed. Monica, from the back row, rushed forward and took Liam's hand. She mouthed, "Are you okay?" and he nodded. I bent down and gently placed the folder on the guestbook, right next to a framed sign that said "Choose a seat, not a side. We're all family now." I almost laughed. Then I faced Evan one more time. "You've made your choice," I said, "and so have I. As of this moment, I'm revoking any shared access to my finances. I'm contacting a lawyer Monday morning to dispute this petition. And Liam, my sweet Liam, I will fight for visitation, even if I have to drag this entire event into court." Sabrina finally spoke. "Wait," she said. "You can't seriously ruin our wedding over some misunderstanding." I smiled. "Sweetheart, I'm not ruining anything. I'm just returning the favor." As I walked away, the guests parted like water. Whispers followed me, but I didn't care. My heels ached. My knee was starting to swell, but I'd never walked taller in my life. Liam caught up to me near the entrance. "Grandma?" "Yes? Was I bad for telling you?" I knelt, despite the pain, looked him straight in the eyes. "No, baby," I said. "You were the only one brave enough to do what's right." 2 hours later, my phone buzzed with a blocked number. It was Evan, but he wasn't calling to apologize. He was calling to threaten me. I was sitting on the hotel bed, still in my shoes, when the phone rang. It was nearly 5:14 p.m., and I hadn't eaten since the single banana I grabbed before the ceremony. The hotel room was quiet, except for the low hum of the mini-fridge. I'd pulled back the curtains just enough to let the late California sun spill across the wrinkled comforter. That sun should have felt warm, but I felt cold, hollow, like my skin had turned to glass and the inside of me had been scraped clean. The caller ID said, "Unknown number," but I knew. A mother always knows. I let it ring 4 times before answering. "Hello?" A pause. Then Evan's voice, low and tight with controlled rage. "You embarrassed me." I didn't respond. He continued, "You showed up uninvited. Why?" "I made a scene. Do you have any idea what kind of damage you've done?" I leaned back on the headboard, letting the phone rest against my cheek. The legal folder lay on the bed next to me, still open to the power of attorney petition. My name stared back at me, twisted and redefined in language so cold, so detached. It could have been written about a stranger. "You did the damage," I said. "I just read it aloud." He scoffed. "That was private, between us." "No, Evan, you made it legal. You filed a public petition to strip me of my autonomy. You don't get to be private anymore." Another pause. Then his voice changed, sharp now, venom-coated. "You have to retract what you said, publicly. Sabrina's family is threatening to pull the honeymoon funding. They're embarrassed. I told them you're sick. I told them you've had episodes." I nearly laughed. "Is that what we're calling it now? An episode? You're not thinking straight. You're acting impulsive. You're saying things that aren't true." "Oh, but the documents are true? The forged signature? The doctor's note you typed on your laptop and printed on clinic letterhead? You didn't even spell Dr. Raymond's name right." That shut him up. Because I'd already called Dr. Raymond. He was livid. He said he hadn't seen me since 2021, and certainly hadn't submitted any cognitive evaluation. In fact, he said Evan came into the office last month asking about early dementia symptoms in aging parents and tried to get a sample note for estate planning purposes. I didn't tell Evan that. Not yet. "Let him sweat. You've always made things difficult," he muttered, a bitter edge creeping into his voice. "Even when Dad died, you didn't let us grieve properly. You made it all about yourself." There it was. The old guilt. The twisting of history. My husband died in a car crash when Evan was 16. I held our family together with duct tape and discount ground beef for years. He doesn't remember the nights I cried in the laundry room so they wouldn't hear. He just remembers that I didn't buy him a class ring. "I made it difficult?" I said. "You mean I didn't hand over everything I had to make you comfortable?" "Evan, I gave you everything I could. I co-signed your student loans, paid the last $4,600 of your car debt when you lost your job. I even helped with the down payment for your first house. Don't you dare rewrite this story. You're confused, he snapped. You've been forgetting things. You told me the same story about Liam's birth 3 times last month. My chest tightened. That's not confusion. That's cherishing. He laughed cruelly. You're not well, Mom. I've spoken to a lawyer. If you keep pushing this, we'll proceed with the petition anyway. You won't win. I'll fight it. You don't have the resources. He wasn't wrong. I had maybe $200 total in savings. Half of that was tied up in a CD I couldn't touch until next spring. But what he didn't know, and what I hadn't told anyone, was that I'd kept every receipt, every bank transfer, every temporary loan to him over the past 15 years. And starting tomorrow, I was going to sort through every page. I'll find the resources, I said. Don't call this number again. Mom, I hung up. I sat there for a long time after that. The hotel room felt smaller than it had before. My body ached. My knees throbbed. But the fire inside me, the one he thought had long gone out, was just getting started. At 7:08 p.m., I called Monica. She picked up on the second ring. I was hoping you'd call, she said. Liam's been asking about you. Is he okay? He's fine. He keeps asking if you're coming to the after-party. I smiled faintly. I think I've made enough of an impression for one day. She was quiet for a moment, then said, Helen, I want to help you. Those words broke something. Hing open in me, not because I needed help, but because she still saw me as a person, not a burden, not a stepping stone to inheritance. I know what Evan's doing, Monica continued. He tried to do something similar with my alimony, told the court I was emotionally unstable, tried to get out of paying. It didn't work, but it dragged on for a year. You're not the first person he's tried to gaslight. I exhaled. I didn't know. Most people don't. He's very charming when he wants to be. I thought about that. How many times Evan had smiled his way out of trouble. How many people had believed him just because he had that soft voice and that perfect, fake patience. Can you send me everything you have? Monica asked. The documents, the petition. I have a friend who works in elder law. She might know what to do. I can scan it tonight. Good. And Helen? Yes? You're not crazy. You're the only sane one left in this mess. After I hung up, I took off my shoes and pulled out the small notebook I kept in my purse, the one I always carried but rarely used. I started writing. March 2020. $500 to Evan. Temporary loan. August 2021. $3,200 for down payment on his second car. April 2022. $1,000 for emergency vet bills that turned out to be tickets to Coachella. Each line was another stitch in the quilt I was building. A record, a testimony, a quiet kind of revenge. Not the loud kind, not the screaming kind, but the kind that takes its time and stings for years. The next morning, a knock on my hotel door came just after 6 o'clock a.m. It wasn't room service. It was Sabrina, and she wasn't alone. The knock came at 6:04 a.m. Sharp. Measured. 3 quick raps. I was already awake. Had been for over an hour. I couldn't sleep. Not with my mind replaying yesterday's wedding like a tape I couldn't eject. Every glance, every word. The way Evan's voice cracked just slightly when I said I do. I'd made 2 cups of hotel coffee. 1 to drink, 1 to hold. The warmth of it in my hands kept me from feeling the tremor that had settled in my fingers overnight. Nerves, mostly, and age. The knock came again. I slipped on my sweater and opened the door, expecting maybe Monica, or even Liam, but it wasn't either of them. It was Sabrina. And behind her stood a tall man in a navy blue blazer, holding a black leather briefcase. He looked young, maybe early 30s, with that smug overconfidence lawyers wear like cologne. Cheap, obvious, and always too strong. Mrs. Fletcher, Sabrina said, her voice tight. She hadn't put on makeup yet. Her eyes were puffy, and her hair was pinned back with clips, clearly slept in. We'd like to speak with you for a moment. I didn't move. Who's we? This is Daniel Marsh, she said. Our attorney. I looked at him. He offered a small nod but didn't smile. That told me everything I needed to know. Is this an ambush or a proposal? I asked flatly. Sabrina's jaw clenched. We're hoping to resolve this situation. Quietly. Before it escalates. Too late for that. Please, she said. Just hear him out. I let them in. They sat on the edge of the small couch, back stiff, as if afraid to touch the cushions. I stayed standing, coffee in hand, letting the silence hang just long enough to make them uncomfortable. Marsh was the first to speak. Mrs. Fletcher, we understand that emotions are high after yesterday's disruption. Disruption, I repeated. You mean the moment your client's mother exposed his attempt to seize her finances during his wedding vows? He didn't flinch. That's one interpretation. It's the correct one. Sabrina cleared her throat. Helen, may I call you Helen? Evan didn't mean for it to go this far. The petition was precautionary. You've had some memory lapses. You repeat yourself. I stared at her. Tell me, Sabrina, how often do you forget where you put your keys? She blinked. Or say the essay, me story twice because it meant something to you? I'm not old, I finished. No, you're not. You're also not a mother, or a widow, or someone who's earned every wrinkle on her face. Marsh interjected. Our goal today is to reach a resolution that avoids litigation. We are prepared to offer you a settlement in exchange for voluntary withdrawal from any disputes regarding your estate or medical decision-making. I raised an eyebrow. You're offering me money to vanish? We're offering peace, he said smoothly. $40,000, tax-free, payable within 14 days. In exchange, you'll sign over medical and financial authority to Evan and refrain from further legal actions, Sabrina added. You'll also agree not to speak about this publicly or involve Monica. So that was it. They weren't scared of me. They were scared of what I'd tell, of who I might convince. I walked to the table, slowly, and picked up the folder. I pulled out the petition and held it up. Do you know what it feels like? I said, voice quiet but firm. To read your own name next to the words mentally unfit? To see your birth date listed under subject of concern? To have your son, the boy you nursed through chickenpox, the boy you sat with during every parent-teacher conference, reduce you to a liability? Neither of them spoke. Do you know what it feels like, I continued, to realize your child doesn't want to care for you, just control you? I folded the paper and placed it gently on the table. Then I looked them both in the eye. My answer is no. Sabrina stiffened. Helen, no amount of money will buy my silence, and if Evan wants control of my life, he'll have to sit across from me in court and earn it, and I promise you, I'll be there, with every receipt, every message, and every damn favor I ever gave that ungrateful boy. Marsh stood, adjusting his blazer. Then we'll proceed with filing. Expect to be served within the week. I walked to the door and opened it, looking forward to it. They left without another word, but as Sabrina passed, she paused. Is still your son, she said. You should think about that. I stared at her, expression unchanged. And I'm still his mother. He should have thought about that. They were gone by 6:22 a.m. I sat on the edge of the bed, my body vibrating with something between fury and resolve. $40,000. That's what they thought I was worth. After everything. After I cleaned up his vomit when he got alcohol poisoning at 17. After I lent him money to cover his rent, $950 per month for 8 months, when he lost his job during the pandemic. He'd repaid none of it. And now he wanted me quiet, tucked away. I picked up my phone and called Monica again. I need a favor, I said, and it's not small. Name it. I want to get ahead of them. I want to talk to your lawyer friend. I'll arrange it. First thing this morning. Also, do you know someone who can help me find a private investigator? There was a beat of silence. Then, you think they're hiding something? I think they're hiding a lot. I want everything. Sabrina's financials, her background, Evan's bank transfers, real estate holdings. If he's using my money for this life, I want a paper trail. I'll make some calls. Thank you. I paused. And Monica? Yes? I'm done playing the sad old woman in the background. It's time they remembered who raised them. That night, Liam called me crying. Not because of the wedding, but because he heard his father say, "She won't be around much longer anyway." I promised him he was wrong. The phone call came at 9:17 p.m. I had just finished organizing the second drawer of receipts from the file box I'd dragged down from the top of my closet last year. Inside were water bills from 2003, faded birthday cards from Liam, and an envelope marked, "Do not open unless I'm dead," which, truthfully, I barely resisted opening out of spite. My eyes were sore, my back ached from the unforgiving hotel chair, but I felt awake, more awake than I'd been in years, focused, sharp. The screen lit up with Liam's name. I answered immediately. "Hi, sweetheart." There was silence at first, then a sniffle. "Grandma?" "Yes, baby. I'm here. Can you talk? I always have time for you." His voice trembled. "Can you promise you won't die?" The words punched the air from my lungs. "What?" I said, heart dropping. "Why would you ask me that?" He sniffled again. "Because I heard Daddy say it. He was talking to Sabrina in the kitchen. He said, 'Don't worry. She won't be around much longer anyway. The stress will finish her off.'" I closed my eyes. The room went quiet, except for the faint buzz of the hotel fridge and the tiny click in my jaw as I clenched it. "Oh, Liam," I said, lowering my voice. "I'm not going anywhere, I promise." "You're not sick?" "No, not even close. Your daddy wants people to think that. But I'm strong, and I'm smart, and I'm fighting back." "Good," he whispered, "because I don't want you to leave." "I won't," I said. "I promise you." And I meant it, every word. After we hung up, I sat back and stared at the ceiling. That was the real cruelty of it, wasn't it? Not just the forged documents or the planned betrayal, but the fact that Evan was planting seeds in my grandson's mind, trying to rewrite reality before it could even root itself properly. That kind of manipulation doesn't just bend the truth, it breaks people. I'd seen it when I was a nurse. Elder patients left in homes by children who said, "She doesn't remember anything." And I'd look into that woman's eyes and know she remembered everything. She was just too tired to fight. I wasn't there yet. And now, I was more dangerous than Evan realized because I had nothing left to lose and a growing list of people willing to help. The next morning, Monica connected me with her friend, Andrea Kwan, an elder law attorney in Oakland. We spoke for almost an hour. She didn't interrupt me once, just listened, took notes. He asked precise, legal-minded questions that made it clear she'd dealt with monsters like Evan before. When I finished explaining the documents, the attempted buy-off, and the hidden petition, she said, "You know what this is, right? Financial elder abuse. At best, attempted. At worst, already in motion." She offered to help me pro bono, said it would be an honor. Apparently, she'd had a grandmother who went through something similar, and it had haunted her ever since. "I'm going to draft a counter-motion," Andrea said. "We'll challenge the petition and file a cease and desist to block further access to your accounts. Do you have documentation of any money you've lent him?" "Pages," I said. "Dates, amounts, what he claimed it was for. That's gold. We'll start there." Meanwhile, Monica called back that afternoon with more news. "My friend at the PI firm owes me a favor," she said. "They're digging into Evan and Sabrina now. Bank accounts, credit pulls, everything we can get without a warrant." "Good," I said, "because something doesn't add up." "How so?" I leaned on the windowsill of my hotel room, looking out at the pool below. A couple of teenagers were lounging near the edge, sunbathing, laughing. I couldn't remember the last time I'd done that. "He's living above his means," I said. "The venue alone must have cost $15,000. Add the tuxes, the flowers, the peacocks, the plated meals. He hasn't worked steadily in over a year, and I haven't seen any new job updates." "You think he's using your money?" "I think he's been stealing it for months." There was a pause. "I'll tell them to dig deeper." By Thursday morning, the first real thread unraveled. Andrea called and said, "Helen, you need to hear this. Evan had listed me as an emergency medical contact for his own health insurance. That wasn't unusual. But what was unusual? He'd also listed me as a dependent on certain documents to claim tax breaks, and in one particularly reckless filing, he'd applied for a reverse mortgage estimate in my name. He'd used my house, which I own outright, as a potential asset for a loan he planned to funnel into his business idea, some crypto-adjacent app called Legacy Chain. He had been rejected, but the application had been submitted, without my knowledge, without my signature. He'd used a copy of my ID, one I'd given him back in 2019, to help me renew my DMV registration online. He's been building this case for a long time, Andrea said, gathering documents, making you look passive and dependent on paper. But he doesn't realize I still have a spine, I said. No, he doesn't, she replied. But soon, the judge will. That night, I printed out everything I had and laid it across the bed. Wire transfers, handwritten notes, bank statements, copies of text messages. Can you cover rent again, just for this month? Pictures of gifts I bought him over the years, the $1,200 MacBook for his grad school application, the $380 leather briefcase he needed for interviews. Piece by piece, I built my case like a puzzle, not of numbers, but of character. I wasn't just fighting to keep my accounts. I was fighting for my identity and for the story Evan had tried to erase. I stayed up until 2:10 a.m., printing, sorting, labeling. By the end, I had 3 neat stacks, one for Andrea, one for Monica's investigator, and one for me. Because now the woman Evan called unwell had the receipts. Friday morning, Monica sent me a photo. It was from Sabrina's Instagram, deleted within minutes, but not before I saw it. A luxury villa, champagne in hand, and the caption, "Thank you, Helen, for the honeymoon of our dreams." It was barely 7:45 a.m. on Friday when Monica's message came through. Just one line of text, "You're not going to believe this," then a photo. I tapped it open, still half asleep, and sipping lukewarm hotel coffee in my robe. There, glowing on my screen, was Sabrina, smiling into the camera, bronzed under tropical sunlight. She was lounging on a poolside daybed, wrapped in a white Versace robe, a glass of champagne in one hand, her other arm extended toward an infinity pool that spilled out over a coastal cliff. The caption read, "Thank you, Helen, for the honeymoon of our dreams. #spoiled, #newlyweds, #finally free." My heart didn't even have time to drop before Monica's next message came through. She deleted it 5 minutes after posting, but I got the screenshot. And beneath that, it's tagged, Amanpulo Private Island, Philippines. Look it up. I did. Amanpulo, luxury resort. Private casitas. Nightly rates upwards of $3,800. Helicopter transfer required. For a 5-day stay, you were looking at $25,000 minimum, not including food, spa, or the kind of extravagant nonsense Sabrina called self-care, and they'd been there since Wednesday. I stared at the screen, heart pounding, stomach tightening into a knot. They left right after the wedding, right after Evan called me confused, right after they offered me a $40,000 hush bribe, and jetted off on a honeymoon likely funded by the very accounts they were trying to seize. I picked up the phone and called Andrea immediately. When she answered, I didn't even say hello. I have proof they used my money for their honeymoon. She didn't miss a beat. Send it. Right now. I will. I'm also calling the bank. I want every recent charge flagged. If there's a withdrawal I didn't authorize— Don't call the bank yet, she interrupted. If you alert them too soon, they'll cover their tracks. Let my firm file a subpoena. Once we have the legal leverage, they won't be able to delete a thing. I sat down on the edge of the bed. Do you know what it's like, I said softly, to watch your name turned into a hashtag by someone who just tried to have you declared legal? Unsound? There was a pause. I do, Andrea said. I've been there. That was the only answer I needed. That afternoon, Monica called again, and this time she was angry. Just got off the phone with my friend at the PI firm, she said. Helen, it's worse than we thought. Go on. Evan and Sabrina opened a joint account 3 months ago. Large deposits, followed by same-day transfers to what looks like a crypto wallet. He's been pulling between $2,000 and $3,500 every 2 weeks since early June. I felt my throat go dry. Where's it coming from? Some of it was from PayPal accounts tied to your email address. Do you use PayPal? I used to, I said. Years ago. For eBay. Did you know there was still an active balance of over $12,000 in that account last April? No, I thought I closed it in 2019. Well, you didn't. But he did. He drained it in 3 transactions, labeled them as family reimbursements. I gripped the phone tighter. My hands had started to shake. He stole my savings, I whispered. Yeah, she said. He did. I remember sitting completely still after that call ended. Not angry, not even sad. Just stunned. The kind of stunned that sits low in your gut, the kind that hums, $12,000 gone. Quietly, cleanly, over months. That money was for Liam's education, for future emergencies, for rent if my knees gave out and I couldn't work anymore. He didn't just steal from me, he stole from my life. And for what? Champagne and hashtags? That night, I did something I hadn't done in over a year. I called my old friend Camille. We'd met back in 2005 when we were both working the night shift at the nursing home in Fremont. Camille was always the loud one. She had this laugh that made you forget you were in a place surrounded by dying people. We hadn't spoken in months. Life had just pulled us apart. But when she picked up, her voice was warm, familiar, and instant. "Girl, I saw that wedding mess all over Facebook. Are you okay?" Tot was already out there. I sighed. "I'm surviving." "What happened?" I told her everything. The forged documents, the petition, the honeymoon photo, Sabrina's smug face with my stolen money. Camille was quiet for a second. Then she said, "You know what you need to do." "I do," I said. "I just need someone to remind me I'm not crazy for doing it." "You're not crazy. You're finally awake, and if you want me in your corner, say the word. I know 2 women from church who'll testify about Evan's behavior at the old community center. You need character witnesses? We'll build you an army." I felt tears sting the corner of my eyes. "I think I do need an army," I said. "Then I'll start calling the troops." Later that night, I wrote a letter to Liam. I wasn't sure if I'd give it to him now or keep it for later. "Dear Liam, I want you to know that I'm fighting because I love you. Not because I'm angry, not because I'm vengeful, but because I won't let people turn kindness into weakness. You deserve to know that when someone tries to hurt you, quietly, behind smiles, you don't have to stay quiet in return. You can speak, you can act, you can protect yourself. I am, and I will. Love, Grandma." I placed the letter inside the same folder as the court documents, because this battle wasn't just about me anymore. It was about what Liam would grow up believing about right and wrong, about justice, about the strength of the women who came before him, and I intended to show him all of it. Monday morning, Evan returned from his honeymoon and sent me a voice message. I saved it, because in it, he said the one sentence that changed everything. Monday morning, the hotel phone buzzed sharply at 8:03 a.m. I wasn't expecting a call, much less a voice message from Evan. Curiosity and dread battled in my chest as I pressed play. The line crackled for a moment before Evan's voice came through, calm, measured, but with an unmistakable edge. "Helen, this has gone far enough. You're making things difficult for everyone, for Liam, for Sabrina, for me. You think you're fighting for something real, but you're just hurting yourself. It's pathetic." He paused. "But here's the thing. You want to know why I did it? Why I pushed so hard for that money? For control? For the house?" Another pause. Longer this time. "Because you never believed in me. Not really. You hid behind your generosity like it was a shield, but you treated me like a failure, a child who'd never grow up." His voice cracked just then, barely audible. "I wanted you to notice me, to respect me, but all I got was pity." Then the message ended abruptly. I stared at the phone, breath caught in my throat. That was him, in all his ugliness. Needy, bitter, desperate for validation. But more than anything, it was a confession. Not a confession of guilt, no, but a confession of why. And that why was just as important, because it told me what I needed to fight against. I wasn't fighting a villain. I was fighting a man broken by my own hands. The next hours blurred together in a haze of cold coffee, scattered papers, and whispered phone calls. Andrea advised me to file the voice message as evidence. "It shows motive," she said. "It's raw and unfiltered. Could be useful if we go to trial." Monica's PI friends dug up more dirt, including a lease agreement for a luxury apartment Evan signed just 2 months ago, claiming a monthly rent of $2,200, yet I knew his income was sporadic at best. "Someone else must be paying," I told Monica. "I'm looking into it." That evening, I sat by the pool of the hotel, watching the sun melt behind the hills. I thought about Evan's words, about pity, about how long I'd been so proud to help him, and how quickly that pride had turned to bitterness. Was I too hard on him? Had I stifled him with my money and my expectations? But then I remembered the nights I stayed up nursing him through colds, the tuition I paid for his degrees, the roof I kept over his head when others wouldn't. Love isn't pity, it's action, and I had acted. For him, for Liam, for myself. The next morning, I received an unexpected message from Sabrina. It was brief, cold. "Helen, please stop interfering. This is our family now. We don't want you here." I read it twice, then I smiled, because that was the moment I knew. I was no longer the woman to be pushed around. I was the woman who would stand, and who would fight. I called Monica. "Prepare the witnesses," I said, "and start drafting a press statement." Press statement? Yes, it's time people knew the truth, not just about Evan, but about how quickly families can fall apart when money and pride get tangled. Monica hesitated, then said, "I'll have a draft for you by tomorrow." That night, I sat at the keyboard, typing a rough draft of the statement. It wasn't about revenge. It was about warning, about the fragility of trust, about the dangers of silence, about how the people we think love us the most can sometimes be the ones who hurt us deepest, and how, sometimes, the best revenge isn't destruction, but exposure. As I finished the draft, I glanced at the photo of Liam on my bedside table. His wide eyes, full of innocence and trust. I whispered, "I'm fighting for you, sweetheart, for your future." And for the first time in a long time, I felt a spark of hope. Later that week, Evan showed up at my hotel unannounced, and what he said to me in the lobby stunned me into silence. It was just past 3 p.m. when the hotel lobby doors swung open with a little more force than necessary. I was sitting near the front desk, leafing through a pile of legal papers Monica had dropped off that morning. The golden afternoon light cast long shadows across the marble floor. I looked up and saw him, Evan, standing there, slightly disheveled, but with that same smirk he'd always worn when he thought he had the upper hand. "Evan," I said coolly, trying not to let my surprise show. He didn't smile. Not really. His eyes flicked nervously around, settling finally on me. "I need to talk," he said. I nodded slowly, gesturing toward a small seating area away from the front desk. Once we were seated, Evan leaned forward, voice low and urgent. "Helen, I didn't want it to get this far. I was trying to protect Liam. From all of this mess, from you." I raised an eyebrow. "Protect him? By stealing from me? By making me look like I'm incapable of managing my own affairs?" He flinched. "I didn't want to hurt you. I felt trapped. You always controlled everything. The money, the decisions. I wanted something to call my own. And so you stole $12,000. You submitted forged documents. You lied to your own son." His hands clenched into fists. I wasn't thinking straight. I was desperate. I leaned back, steadying my breathing. "Desperation doesn't excuse betrayal, Evan. But it does explain it." He looked down at his hands, a flicker of shame crossing his features. "Can you forgive me?" he asked quietly. I wanted to believe him. Part of me wanted to forgive. But forgiveness without accountability is just a fancy word for forgetting. And I wasn't ready to forget. Not yet. "I won't stop this fight," I told him firmly. "Because it's not just about money. It's about respect. About truth." His face hardened again. "Then you leave me no choice." He stood abruptly. "I'm warning you, Helen. If you push this any further, you'll lose Liam forever." The words hit me like a slap. "Liam belongs to me," I said, standing too, "and I will never stop fighting for him." He hesitated, then turned and walked away without another word. As the door closed behind him, I felt a rush of determination. He could threaten me all he wanted, but I knew the truth would win. That night, I called Elle. "I'm to Grandma?" he answered, his voice bright but cautious. "I'm here for you," I said. "No matter what happens." We talked for nearly an hour. About school, about his friends, about the wedding day, and what really happened. He told me how he'd felt scared but brave, how he wanted me to be safe, and I promised him, again, I would protect him. The next day, Monica sent me the draft of the press statement. It was sharp, clear, honest. It didn't paint Evan as a villain, but as a flawed man who made dangerous choices. I read it carefully, then signed off. Release it. That afternoon, the statement went live. Emails and texts started flooding in. Some were sympathetic. Others were cold, accusing me of airing dirty laundry. But one message stood out. From Camille. Your army is gathering. Hold steady. And for the first time in weeks, I felt surrounded. 3 days after the statement went public, I received a mysterious envelope in the mail. Inside was a single photograph that changed everything I thought I knew about Evan and Sabrina. 3 days after the press statement went live, the tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. My phone wouldn't stop buzzing. News outlets, distant relatives, even strangers offering condolences or judgment. But then the mail came. An ordinary white envelope, unmarked, slipped through the slot beneath my door at precisely 2:14 p.m. No return address, no note, just my name, typed in neat block letters on the front. I hesitated before tearing it open. Inside was a single photograph, a glossy 4x6 print. The image was sharp, clear, almost too perfect, like it had been captured with the precision of a professional. It was Evan and Sabrina, but not at the wedding. Not on some romantic getaway. This was taken at the back door of a dimly lit building, an alleyway that looked more like a warehouse district. Evan's arm was wrapped tightly around a woman who wasn't Sabrina. Her hair was dark, curly, cascading past her shoulders. They were laughing. Too close, too familiar. The kind of laughter that doesn't belong to a married couple in love, but to secret lovers who think no one's watching. My breath caught. The photo had a date stamp. July 11th, 5:47 p.m., just 2 days before the wedding. I stared at the picture for what felt like hours. It shattered everything I thought I knew. Sabrina's smug smiles, Evan's denials, the honeymoon, the forged documents, the stolen money. But now, this wasn't just about betrayal or greed. This was about deception on a whole new level. I called Monica immediately. "We need to verify this," I said, voice shaking. "I'm on it," she replied. "I'll cross-reference the location with surveillance footage and see if we can identify the woman." We agreed. This was the kind of evidence that could turn the tide. That night, I lay awake, turning the photo over and over in my mind. Why had no one told me about this? Had Evan been living a double life all along? Was Sabrina the innocent victim, or was she playing a part in this charade? The next morning, Monica's call came early. "Got it," she said. "The woman in the photo is named Marissa. She's Evan's ex. They were together for 5 years before Sabrina came into the picture." "Why didn't he tell me?" I whispered. "Apparently, they broke up bitterly. Marissa says Evan promised to marry her but disappeared right before their engagement." "And now?" I asked. "Marissa's been spotted at several events in the last month, always close to Evan. Looks like she's been following him." I closed my eyes. The picture was more than proof of infidelity. It was a window into a web of lies. Later that day, I confronted Sabrina over the phone. "Why didn't you tell me about Marissa?" I demanded. There was a pause. "Because I didn't want to hurt Liam," she said softly. "But Liam deserves the truth." "Maybe," she whispered. "But some truths destroy families." I hung up feeling torn. Was I fighting for Liam's future, or just tearing apart what little family he had left? But deep down, I knew the truth. No matter how painful, was the only path forward. That evening, I penned a letter to Marissa. "Dear Marissa, I don't know what your intentions are, but if you truly care for Liam and want to help expose the truth, I'm willing to listen. Helen." Then I waited. 2 days later, an envelope arrived, this time with a handwritten note. Marissa wanted to meet. When I met Marissa, she handed me a USB drive. Inside was a secret that would blow the entire case wide open. The cafe was quiet, tucked away on a sleepy side street, the kind of place where the baristas knew your order before you even walked in. I arrived 10 minutes early, nerves tangled like wires inside my chest. I hadn't expected Marissa to show up, or to bring what she did. She was waiting at a corner table, hands wrapped around a steaming cup of black coffee. Her hair was longer than in the photo, pulled back into a loose braid, and her eyes held a mixture of wariness and resolve. "Thank you for coming," she said quietly as I sat down. I nodded. You said you had something important to show me. She reached into her purse and pulled out a small, plain USB drive. It looked almost insignificant, like something you'd find at the bottom of a junk drawer. Here, she said. This contains everything you need to know about Evan and Sabrina. Back in my hotel room, I plugged the USB into my laptop, heart pounding. The files were meticulously organized. There were text messages, photos, bank statements, even voice recordings. One by one, I sifted through them. The texts told a story I hadn't dared imagine. Sabrina and Evan had been conspiring for months. They coordinated fake bills, inflated expenses, and set up shell companies to funnel money away from me. There was a recorded phone call where Evan mocked me, saying, "She's too blinded by her own pride to see the truth. The money's ours now." And then there were messages between Sabrina and a mysterious man named Jay. References to cleaning up and keeping things quiet. The financial documents confirmed what Monica had suspected. The $12,000 I thought was gone, it had been funneled into a joint investment that didn't exist. They had even tried to transfer the deed to my house into a company I'd never heard of, all within the last week. But the most chilling piece was a video file. It was a hidden camera recording taken during the wedding rehearsal dinner. There, on the screen, I saw Sabrina whispering to Evan, "Make sure Grandma doesn't find out about the trust fund until after the ceremony." Her smile was cold, calculated, and then Evan laughed, a cruel, hollow sound I barely recognized. I sat back, shaking. They had planned this entire charade from the start. The fake honeymoon, the forged papers, the threats, everything was a game to them, and I was just a piece on the board. The next morning, I forwarded everything to Andrea with a note. "This is it. We have what we need." Her reply was swift. "I'll get the subpoenas ready. We're going public with this in court." That afternoon, I called Liam. "Grandma," he said, voice tentative. "I have something you need to know," I said. "But I want you to be strong." He was silent for a moment. "I'm ready." As I hung up, I felt a strange mixture of relief and fear. The next steps would be the hardest yet, because once the truth was out, nothing would ever be the same. The day of the court hearing, Neng arrived, and just as I was about to testify, a shocking confession from Liam left the entire courtroom gasping. The courthouse was cold and impersonal, a stark contrast to the turmoil churning inside me. It was 9:15 a.m. when I stepped into the courtroom, dressed in my best navy blue suit, the one I'd reserved for moments when I needed to feel strong. The gallery was packed, cameras flashed, reporters whispered, and there, sitting across from me, was Evan, smug but visibly tense. Sabrina sat beside him, her eyes flickering nervously around the room. Andrea approached me just before the hearing started. "You're ready," she said softly. I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. When the judge called the court to order, my heart pounded like a drum. Andrea began the opening statement, laying out the case with precision. The forged documents, the stolen money, the betrayal of trust. Then came my turn. I took a deep breath and stepped up to the stand. "Your Honor," I began, voice steady but emotional. "I stand here not just for myself, but for my grandson, Liam." I recounted the story, the wedding day, the photograph from the alley, the forged documents, the stolen money. I described how betrayal had come not just from strangers, but from my own flesh and blood. As I spoke, I saw Liam in the courtroom, watching intently. His face was pale, eyes wide. When the prosecutor called him to the stand, the room hushed. Liam's voice trembled as he began. "Grandma has always been there for me, even when things got hard." He paused, then added, "There's something I need to say." The room went silent. Liam took a deep breath. "I lied to protect my father." A collective gasp echoed. I knew about Marissa, about the lies, but I wanted my parents to stay together. He looked directly at Evan. "I was scared to lose my family." Evan's face went ashen. Sabrina's eyes filled with tears. The judge leaned forward, motioning for calm. Liam continued, "But I've realized the truth is more important than pretending." He looked at me, then back to the court. "I want to help Grandma." Andrea whispered to me, "This changes everything." The defense scrambled, their confidence shattered. Evan's facade cracked, revealing the man beneath, broken, desperate, finally exposed. When it was my turn again, I felt a weight lift. I looked at Liam and whispered, "Thank you." The hearing ended with the judge adjourning for deliberation. Outside the courtroom, reporters swarmed. I stood tall, proud, despite the exhaustion. Because this was more than a legal battle. It was a fight for truth, for family, for justice. The judge's verdict came fast, but what shocked me most was what Evan did next, right there in the courtroom. The courtroom was tense, the air heavy with anticipation. At exactly 2:30 p.m., the judge returned to deliver the verdict. I gripped the edge of the witness stand, every muscle taut with nerves. The judge cleared his throat. "After careful consideration of the evidence and testimonies," he began, "this court finds Evan Thompson guilty of financial fraud, forgery, and breach of fiduciary duty." A quiet gasp rippled through the courtroom. Evan's face remained unreadable, but then something unexpected happened. He stood up slowly, hands clenched at his sides. "Your Honor," he said, voice shaking but clear, "I accept this verdict." The room fell silent. "I'm sorry, not just for what I did, but for everything I put my family through." He looked at me, then at Liam. "I lost my way, but I want to make amends." A wave of emotions washed over me. Relief, anger, but also a strange, reluctant hope. This was not the proud man I once knew. This was someone broken, finally facing the consequences. Outside the courthouse, reporters bombarded me with questions. "Do you forgive him? What will you do next?" I looked at Liam, standing beside me, and said firmly, "I forgive because I have to, but I will never forget." That night, as I sat alone in my hotel room, I thought about the journey, the lies, the betrayals, the pain, but also about the small victories, the truth exposed, the family slowly beginning to heal. Liam's innocent face came to mind, his whispered words on the wedding day, "Look under the table, Grandma." And now I understood. Sometimes the most painful betrayals reveal the deepest truths. Sometimes the smallest voices hold the biggest secrets. And sometimes standing up mid-ceremony isn't just an act of anger. It's a declaration of strength. The road ahead wouldn't be easy. Rebuilding trust takes time, but I was ready because I had fought for my family, for my grandson, and for myself. This story ended with justice, but the scars remain. And sometimes that's the price of truth.